Thank you very much. Goodness me, a very exciting briefing. Please come in and sit down and be relaxed. So, I am a geek. I wear glasses, I like computers, but I also find a lot of the way that geeks talk about the future as a mixture of boring and terrifying, in that people are absolutely obsessed with the astonishing capabilities of machines, and so they should be. We're at this sort of remarkable stage when a lot of technologies are starting to capture more and more of those things that for quite a long time we persuaded ourselves were uniquely human. Natural language, certain kinds of creativity, recognizing pictures of cats, that most vital of human talents in a digital age. Machines are now almost as good at cat pictures as us. And this has provoked a very kind of anxious and important debate about, what is left for us. This sort of, the tide of automation is creeping towards us. I don't quite like the King Canute image, but you do sometimes feel that people are standing on these little islands of human exceptionalism, saying, retreat, and maybe there'll be some kind of job left for us at the end of this. Maybe the machine overlords will cut us a break and let me write poetry or go on giving talks or something. And as you can probably tell, in many ways I'm very unimpressed by the way we are doing this talking. Because I think we're asking some dangerously wrong questions. I think we're asking, when am I going to be replaced? Can I be replaced? How can I be replaced? Who's expendable? And I think underneath this lies a very dangerous trend where effectively we are judging ourselves by machine criteria and judging humans inadequate because of that. And when we're asking the wrong kind of questions, because we're not actually asking with confidence what it is that not only people are good at, but people want to do, that people like doing, that people will go on insisting is done by humans. And perhaps most importantly, we're not asking for me the really exciting question for the next 10, 20 years. What does it look like to have as rich as possible a relationship between humans and machines, and also between humans and humans mediated by automated systems? So I'm worried by AI. But the AI that really worries me is artificial idiocy. This is a phenomenon you will probably have encountered. If you have a sat-nav and you've ever driven down a street so manifestly inappropriate for your vehicle that by the time you stop and realise you're on a pavement, you cannot believe how stupid you have been. You have suffered from artificial idiocy. If you've ever been in one of those scenarios where you're dealing with allegedly another human being, and they start saying to you, computer says no. Can I do this, please? Computer says no. It's one of the great phrases of our time. And it nails, I think, a very important problem, which is that under certain conditions, the systems we build, the way we work and interact, treats people like slightly broken flesh machines. And we are not that. But under certain circumstances, we behave like that. So I want to talk a little bit about talent, about human talent, and about, I think, a more cautiously optimistic vision for the future, where we focus not only on what we're good at, but what we want to do, what we like to do, and what it means to challenge the idea that speed, efficiency, automation are good and inevitable, because they certainly aren't. So, I'm going to talk about time. I'm going to start off by talking about new scarcities. We live in an age of suffusion. Our pathologies are those of excess. Junk food we can't stop cramming into our mouths. Junk time. Junk attention. YouTube videos we can't stop watching. adverts suffusing our social media networks, spam, email written by other humans that might as well be spam. Yeah, been there. And the problem is that information itself consumes something very important. What does information consume? It consumes the attention of its recipients. One of the great scarcities in our age is human time and human attention. Technology is very good often at helping us spend our time, very bad at telling us or helping us decide what to spend our time on. And I think actually we're at a moment of interesting transition, approaching, if you like, peak wasted time. Now, a lot of the business models out there, effectively, your time is their money. A free product is one in which, online, you are what they're selling, or rather, your data, your time, your activities turned into the metrics that can be passed on to advertisers that can be used to match stuff. And I think the problem is that a lot of technologies, a lot of the patterns around this are pricing human time too cheaply. Or to put it another way, they are about as psychologically astute as Donald Trump on a bad day. They are absolutely terrible at getting the best out of people, because people, as we know, have very limited reserves of high-quality attention. What psychologists like Daniel Kahneman think about as slow thinking, that system where we come up with new ideas, think outside the box, make a creative contribution, where we relate meaningfully to each other, where we pause. There's a very, very limited supply of this. I won't go into the sort of psychological literature, but it's kind of terrifying how easily depleted people are. We sort of know this. If you've got children, you know this. After about 2 hours without a break in nutrition, the toddler is basically it's kind of broken. They don't work. You have to stuff carbohydrates into their mouth. We aren't so different as adults. There's plenty of frankly terrifying research around what tired, hungry, information-overloaded people do. What they do is they behave like stupid machines. They go with shortcuts, heuristics. We respond reflexively without thinking. We twitch in reflex. This is changing, interestingly. If we talk about what is susceptible to automation, what's clear is that a lot of the low-hanging fruit of the workplace and of the social world are going to begin to be taken over on our behalf by smart systems. Automated personal assistants. Amazon's Alexa, who lives inside Echo, the little black cylinders you may have seen. Google Now, Facebook's M. Tech companies are pouring more money into this particular kind of AI than anything else, indeed than everything else put together, because they think there's huge opportunities in helping people deal with information suffusion by this whole kind of other level of aggressive informational filtering. They will send replies to other people on your behalf. They will take care of routine stuff. And this is a good emblem, I think, of the way that technology is going to change a lot of workplaces, a lot of jobs, a lot of our lives. It's going to automate that which can be automated. Now that, for me, creates a very obvious element of scarcity and value and opportunity around people. What we bring to the party is stuff that can't be automated or that we don't want to automate. Things like empathy, things like creativity. One of the key features of an information technological world is that there is less and less we can accomplish individually. complexity and interconnectedness are the order of the day. And that means, the flip side of that, is that there is more and more we can accomplish together, if and only if we're actually good at working together. So to pick a sort of slightly more concrete example, 10 years ago or so, in a lot of firms, a lot of environments, you needed a large number of sort of hardcore geeks with great coding expertise to get your systems working and keep them there. And now, so much of that stuff is sort of commodified or available that you probably need one person to do what 10 people did before. But 10 years ago, it was okay if all of those geeks looked like me and had the social skills to exchange greetings with other humans if given a run-up and a script. But now, in this appallingly complicated world, we need people who know about code to be able to talk as richly as possible to people who have other kinds of knowledge. In fact, the great added value, the great test, is how richly we are able to translate different domains of expertise and knowledge to and from, if you like, the language of machines, the automated world. How good are the discussions different people in different departments with different levels of expertise are able to have about systems and people and their consequences? How good is the translation between some data stuff, some human stuff, between the knowledge, the talent that people have, and the way that lives in the world? And what I worry about is that in the immediate term, a lot of the way we work, a lot of the systems we use, erode and devalue the very things that in the long term are the most important guarantors of human success. Two observations about this. The Economist, that great organ of impartial wisdom, said last year in an article, there's about 1 billion young people in the world who are going to be entering the workplace in the next decade. And 40% of the jobs they're going to do not exist yet. Now this is not a one-off. This may well be true every decade of this century. Futurology is a bit of a mug's game, but there is an astonishing speed of transition associated with technology and work and life. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. And against this, when we talk about things like talent and education and skills, we have a little bit of a problem, because as far as I understand it, the dominant education and training model is that at the age of 18, you go to university and your brain is nurtured expensively for 3 years, and then at 2021 you pop out into the workplace, educated, and then you work. Now that's just weird. That's weird in the sense that you're going to be doing a lot of very different jobs during the course of your life. They probably don't exist, not all of them, at the time that you're studying. To some degree, your success and the ability to make the most of your talent and abilities is going to be conditioned by how good you are at learning and collaborating, at these meta skills that allow you to thrive in a situation of change, rather than like some kind of beached cetacean watch as the world moves on from your particular skill set. And so again, I think people have used the phrase lifelong learning very perhaps glibly and easily, but in an information age, your relationship with information, your ability to learn from others, to work with others, to communicate richly with others, your ability to update your skills, your ability to relate one domain of knowledge to another, the ability of your workplace, your environment, your colleagues to sort of nurture this, to support this, these are going to be some of the most important determining factors in how you remotely attempt to keep up with this world. In terms of relationships, I don't know if anyone here has ever been in a relationship with a very inflexible partner. Someone very rigid in the way they do things. And one of the features of being in a relationship when you are the very soul of courtesy and empathy and flexibility, and your partner isn't, you can do things many ways. You can accommodate. They can't. One of the long-term consequences of this kind of relationship, assuming you don't run a mile, is that over time you end up doing things their way and not your way. Again, sociologists sometimes call this the tyranny of the minority. It's the idea that if you have a room with 100 people, 90 of whom are gloriously open-minded and flexible, and 10 of whom are astonishingly rigid about what they do and do not consider acceptable, then the flexible majority will fall in line with the working practices or beliefs of the minority, because effectively the minority wield a veto. Now, I have a confession to make. I am in a very intimate relationship with an astonishingly, punishingly inflexible partner. To share that with you today. I'm going to introduce you to my partner. Here she is. She's made by Samsung, but she's not quite as fiery as some of the bigger ones. I don't like more planes with those. But yeah, thank you. I'm here all night. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but if you look at the current way a lot of us relate to and through our beautiful tools and devices, there is a story of our adaptation to their inflexibility. Email is a great example. Email, my phone, the system. What happens when I use it? Well, what tends to happen from a certain angle is that my email inbox turns into a to-do list written for me by other people. And from a certain angle, a lot of the jobs I see my friends and family and enemies doing look a bit like their job title is email inbox emptier. And what they do is they go through their email inbox all the time, wherever they are, whatever they're doing, the inbox is there. And they seek to empty it by dealing with these emails. But email has a very cunning trick up its digital sleeve. Because once you've deleted, the cats and the spam, the way you deal with email is by replying to it. Or replying all. But that fills up some other poor bugger's inbox. And the way you tend to use email still is that it's a kind of digital presenteeism. I'm here, I'm working. Busy work, look at me, productivity. I'm just going to copy everybody in. Have you seen the report? I sent it last night. Have you seen the new version? That is the new version. Have you copied in? Jack? Yes, I have, but I moved into BCC. Great. And when we go away, just to make sure that we don't escape this hideousness, we still often instruct our email automatically to email everyone who emails us, apologising for the fact that we can't email them, but explaining that when we get back, we will email them. And they might send a follow-up email. And we have email and messaging systems. Messaging systems are a lot better, but they also create terrible kind of proxies for productivity, intelligence, success. Speed. You send a message to someone, you are counting, and the little ticks tell you, but they've read it. Why haven't they replied? They must hate me. My life is over. It is my job to reply to that message as soon as possible. It is not socially acceptable for me to sit on a message for more than 4 hours. Beyond that, it's apocalyptic. You get the idea. The point I'm making is that although our tools are staggeringly powerful, they are also orders of magnitude more inflexible than the most rigid, hidebound human. And unless we realise that when we work with and through these systems, we are entering into a negotiation, then we are very poor negotiators. We do things their way. And these systems are largely accidental and imperfect. They're not designed with some optimum of human productivity and self-maximisation in mind. In fact, they're generally designed because a bunch of people think this will work well technologically. This is how good machines ought to work. More is better, faster is better. Everything recorded is better. More data, yay. Artificial intelligence and big data, they are the same thing, in that if you want to train an artificial intelligence, you have to have big data. Now that's great, but humans don't work like this. We need small data. We need varieties in the textures of time and attention in our lives. We need naps and Mars bars. Not just 3-year-olds. Although you don't give them Mars bars. Very bad. And I think some of the questions we need to ask need to start from a very different place to the systems and the habits we're locked into. When we think about it, we often know what the system wants. We know what the machine wants. It wants to live in a world where that which cannot be counted does not count, where more is better and faster is better. To live in a world where you are constantly available 24/7. Was to live in a world where if it doesn't appear on the screen, it doesn't exist. Where you drive off a bridge into the sea because the sat-nav has decided that's a really good route. And this might look some exaggerated worries, but I think there is an unseen negotiation going on. You know what the system wants. What do you want? What do you want for yourself and others? What does it mean for you to make the most of your talent and others' talent? What does it mean to make the most of human talent? And of course, we do tend to know the answers to these questions. There's something hard to quantify about this, but it tends to mean empathy and nurture and communication. It tends to mean space, time and flexibility. It tends to mean autonomy and control. It tends to mean not cutting humans out of every loop. And one of the great problems with the glory of automated systems, and any engineer will tell you this, is that they tend to work absolutely beautifully, right up to the point at which they fail catastrophically. This is the nature, this is fragility. Highly automated, beautiful systems iron out all the kinks, run on autopilot, and it's all great until suddenly it isn't. And then the trouble is that if everybody is using the same automated systems, the system failure is widespread and catastrophic, and none of the people involved have got a clue what's going on or how to put it right. We cut ourselves out of more and more loops. We have working practices that surreptitiously encourage presenteeism and a kind of automatism. And we are de-skilling ourselves in the areas that we most need if we are to remain robust, resilient learners and cooperators in the long term. And we cut ourselves out of the loop so that we lose the precious domain knowledge that would allow us to build a better system when the beautiful one we've got blows up in our faces catastrophically, as they are rather prone to do. And so, what is the alternative? Well, I modestly submit that the alternative is stopping thinking about humans versus machines, stopping thinking how can I replace and automate, and is starting to think about what does it mean to say no to the machine? What does it mean for you to be extraordinarily inflexible about certain priorities to do with autonomy, communication, creativity, critical thinking, space, time, attention, to be deeply intolerant of the degree to which your time is wasted by many of the tools in your life? To go back to what I was saying at the start, technology offers us extraordinary velocity, opportunity. But these are just measures of speed. They're worse than useless if we don't know where we're going. Technology is often extraordinarily powerful at helping us answer closed questions. How tall is Mount Everest? What is the fastest route to X? What's the traffic like on the M25? Probably awful. But it's sometimes worse than useless at helping us answer with open questions. What matters? What's important? What's valuable here? What do I want? What am I best at? What are we going to do next? What really matters here? It can be worse than useless because fast time tends to close out slow time. Because if you have at your fingertips the answer to closed questions, you don't necessarily spend some time with others coming up with your own answers to open questions. And so I'm going to end with a quote from Daniel Kahneman, who is, I think, a very important thinker today more than ever. I think a lot of the stuff he says becomes more relevant every time we build a sort of powerful new system, because it reminds us to think about making the most of a powerful system inside our skulls. And he says that there is a universal human tendency that when faced with a difficult question, we often answer an easy question instead without noticing the substitution. Now this, of course, is how a lot of automation functions. It replaces a wicked question with a tame question. Am I loved? Does anyone even care? That's difficult. How many likes did my last Facebook post get? It's an easy question. It's very powerful to turn difficult questions into easy questions. To pretend everyone is the same. To pretend that everything is interchangeable. It's very powerful. It's how we explain ourselves to machines a lot of the time. But I think unless we work very hard indeed at creating the space and the skills to address the difficult questions that are worth debating, we risk, ironically enough, moving into the future de-skilled in the areas most important for our survival, thriving, for working out what talent really means in a digital age. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom, for that wonderful talk. As a mother of two young boys, I'm absolutely fascinated to know what I should be encouraging them to focus their education on in the coming years. We're now going to open the floor to any questions. So Lucy's sort of standing at the back there.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a mic. If anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and then shout. Anyone got a question for Tom? Stunned into silence.
Over there in the left at the back.
Yeah, stand up, please. Oh, thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Tom, for that very thought-provoking talk. You mentioned the skills such as learning, collaboration, ability to translate knowledge across domains as being critical in the future. So when I'm thinking about recruitment, what would be your top 3 recommendations for recruiters to actually accommodate these skills? Because in my experience, recruitment is not fit for purpose.
Yeah. So,
I'm a recruiter, but just that's my experience there.
so there's a lot of fantastic research in this area. One, perhaps slightly controversial answer, but something I find quite powerful, is that it is suggested by a number of tech thinkers that there's a really useful heuristic, a shortcut, for the kind of person more likely to possess the attributes that make them the most robust in the face of technology. And that is femaleness. And that, broadly speaking, actually one of the most powerful predictors of people's ability to do this stuff is them not being men. Now, I'm quite sure where I stand on that. I think in recruitment in general there's a data issue in that a lot of the time we use data sets procedurally or looking at CVs and so on. And one of the classic problems with big data, which I won't go into, but it is very broadly speaking that you look at a big old data set and you analyse it and look at it, it's very, very easy to effectively become very brilliant at reproducing past patterns in the future. So a classic, if I had a wonderful algorithm or a wonderful recruitment process that looked at my great big company X and said, it does wonderful analysis of what makes someone senior management level, and we've taught it to this algorithm and we've got all this running within this great process, and we've got our list of candidates and so on. And all this brilliance means that what we've managed to do is come up with lots and lots of white men in their 50s. Okay. Wow.
Powerful one.
There's a very angry 50-year-old white man. What we've done is managed to come up with lots and lots of white men in their 50s because that is the past pattern and we are fitting the future to the past pattern. And one of the really exciting things we can try to do is, in a sense, concentrate on what we need to forget if we want the future to be different to the past. I'm a big fan of things like name-blind applications. If you totally eliminate any reference to name or gender, that's a good start. I think we can go further, encouraging serendipity in application processes, ruling out whole categories of data, using rather more open peer-to-peer networks to try and get people in. I think going down different channels, going down channels to do with relationships and so on. Also on the recruitment front, Kahneman and others again, in a sense, suggest that, broadly speaking, a small number of factors are better than a large number of factors. Small amounts of data that are kind of non-problematic can be much more revealing than large amounts. And also when you're talking to people, it's interesting the degree to which a very high degree of confidence in what you think about people is profoundly misleading, actually, a lot of the time. That this person you're convinced will be marvellous turns out not to be, in this very elaborate process in which you all hang out together, turns out not to have much merit or predictive value. And so the antidote to that, ironically enough, is to make certain kinds of data feature larger in this process to try and iron out various kinds of human confirmation bias. So I'm being very circuitous here, but essentially I am interested in the degree to which we can very carefully try to rule out the problems of confirmation bias, prejudice, and sort of data past repeating present and so on by eliminating large amounts of data and focusing on small amounts of interesting, genuinely comparable data, and then using that systematically to complement the kind of judgments we pass, and having a strict weighting on the amount that humans get to input into the process, which should be done probably using randomized questionnaires attached to pre-agreed criteria on the same questions asked, which is, I think, standard in sort of recruitment interviewing process anyway. But in other words, we have to be very alert to the kind of biases that lead to bad processes all the way through, and then try and build a good process. And good processes, in my view, have, often involve kind of small, significant data and various kinds of forgetting and data blindness and willingness to try and introduce serendipities. I feel that's not the most compact answer. I wish I had. But yes, employ more women.
One more.